Hello. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rocket Lab Weekly episode number 5, if you can believe it. I'm here with Matt Money. His Twitter is and YouTube channel is in the description box below if you want to go there and check him out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming every week. And this is the episode that is just before earnings week, and we have had one of our stocks that we both hold report insanely amazing earnings last week. And let's talk about Rocket Lab, what happened with Rocket Lab this week and what we expect from the earnings and some other related news. So let's begin with the casuals. So Matt, you have just moved house. Congratulations. You're in a new setup.
No more 25th floor, riding up and down elevators. It's about half the distance to work that I used to do. So it's nice to have a place to call my own, but at the same time, I'll miss looking out at downtown at nighttime. That was pretty sweet. I'll have to post a picture on Twitter.
I was just going to say 25th floor. That must be pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, especially when I was dating a little bit more. I don't date as much as I used to, but yeah, it was kind of cool to always bring people home and look over the city at nighttime. The sun at sunset bounces off the buildings. It's really beautiful, but at the same time, getting to and from, especially in the evenings, was pretty tough because I work actually almost out in Katy, Texas, which is west of Houston. So the drive back and forth was a little bit rough. So it'll be nice to have a space that's a little bit closer, and also it's more. It's about 60% more space, maybe more than that. So 3-bedroom as opposed to 1. So
just remember when you're buying all the furnishing and new appliances to just keep some cash aside for Rocket Lab stops. Don't go all out.
Yeah. I mean, depending on what happens on Wednesday, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah, depending on what happens on Wednesday, I might have to buy more or rethink things. But I'm pretty certain that I'll end up likely buying more for sure.
Yeah, this week was a pretty good week also for Rocket Lab. It was not as crazy as for our Palantir, but I always get this feeling what we talked about, like shit, what if I missed the window of being able to buy in the 420s and now it's like never going to come back down to these levels that it was anymore. And I really got this because okay, this is just my opinion and my speculation. Right. So Palantir was a really, really big success for me as a stock. I started buying at $12 and then I DCA'd down at $10 and then DCA'd more at $8 and DCA'd a little bit at $6. And I kept following it on the way down, kept feeling worse and doubting myself. But it was a really good investor lesson because we kept researching the company, and then you have your emotions and then you have what the data tells you. Right. And then it was like, okay, all the data is telling me that this is a super great company. And then, okay, my emotion is telling me that I'm effed and, I should quit, sell everything and don't come back to the stock market. And then it ended up being on the Palantir earnings report day, it was my Palantir position was it was my portfolio, but it's mostly Palantir. It was like $27,000 up in one day.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I was
more than I do then. That's pretty crazy. Yeah,
I myself was like, damn, this is pretty crazy, and I can't help but draw some parallels to Rocket Lab because Rocket Lab is a smaller market cap than Palantir. I feel it has like a bigger runway, potentially, like a bigger space to expand into. And I see the similarities that on Palantir, when I was investing, the main problem that everybody had is that one of the problems was that they are not GAAP profitable, but because they were cash flow positive with the stock-based compensation, there was zero risk of bankruptcy. So it was like, okay, right. Even if we go into bad economic times, the company will come out at the other end and we're going to see what happens. And on Rocket Lab, I feel that it's very similar, but it's not because they are not cash flow positive. Even, you know, the non-GAAP measure is not cash flow positive. But I know that they have, you know, the New Zealand government invested into them. I think, at least, I'm sure that some way they are invested into them. Then I know that NASA has, you know, this policy to keep, you know, as like they want competition. They don't want to basically move over the NASA budget to SpaceX and just change the name of the US government budget, move it over to Musk. So I think that there's so many ways how that company is very safe from bankruptcy. And on top of that, you have Peter Beck, who has, you know, done the impossible I don't know how many times. And so I just can't help but bring parallels, you know. And I'm really trying to look at how to increase my position so I don't miss the run up. And yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
No, I think there's a reason why I'm investing in Rocket Lab here, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, I'm looking for companies. These are the kind of companies from a speculative standpoint that I like to invest in, and it's getting to the point where they're exiting the speculative side and entering more of the growth side where they're more stable. So Palantir was very similar to that. Palantir for me is a little bit different because I had that background with working with Palantir, you know, 6-7 years ago. And so I always was like, this is kind of cool. But you're right. Palantir IPO'd at a much higher price. And so I think the return in the medium term is definitely going to be hampered by that. You know, I could see it getting to $100 billion market cap versus the $40 billion market cap right now. But that's only a 2.5x probably in the next 5 to 10 years for Palantir versus this company. Kind of what you're alluding to, it's earlier on in its wave of kind of getting towards that profitability piece. And so I think with all the competition in the space, I think with all the impacts that we're going to probably talk about throughout this entire show this week of people having complications to pay their bills, people just continuing to go bankrupt, all that, I think it puts a large spotlight on the sector because it's a very rare company that's able to actually excel and do things in a manner which they could actually get paid. At the moment, you could probably look at SpaceX, you could probably look at ULA, but all the other ones, they're really, I guess, tainted with either failed launches or low cash reserves or bankruptcies to the point where it puts a lot of focus on Rocket Lab to say, well, why would I invest in something that's a 1 in 100 chance of even surviving? And then 2, having an opportunity for it to actually grow into a $50 to $100 billion business. Now, $50 to $100 billion, that's a large ask, right? That's the opportunity potentially, right? I mean, that's looking at the other pendulum, right? There's bankruptcy or there's sort of company.
But you see, like, for example, when I look at, for example, Rocket Lab, as I said, like, I cannot see bankruptcy as because of what I said. Like, I think that if things would go really, really bad, I believe that they would get contracts from NASA just to keep them alive. And if things would still be going very bad, I believe that New Zealand and Australia would probably bail them out. Because it's like a national pride, you know, I'm basically sure of that. So for me, it's like the biggest risk is that this company is just not going to grow as much as we think. And I really like because I think that that's a very asymmetric risk reward, you know, because it's like at worst your money is going to be the same in, you know, 3 to 5 years, and at best it can, you know, like 10x. And I think it has a much more likelihood of being way more than we have invested with very little risk, in my opinion.
No, I would agree. I mean, the run rate that the company has in terms of cash and cash equivalents on hand, I mean, just to look at the first 6 months, and we'll see what happens through the first 9 months here on Wednesday, they burned just under $50 million worth of cash. And so if you were to say that, you know, I've always just been very conservative, saying that they burn $40 million a quarter. they're not burning $40 million a quarter anymore. The first 2 quarters alone, they burned just over 40 million. And in fact, it was under 50 million for 2 quarters. So if you were to say, take that as it is, then the runway for this thing to really get it right before they're actually out of cash is probably in the 2026, 2027 timeframe. And it's going to get better with time because Space Systems continues to grow. I think that the profitability of the Electron rocket continues to grow. Anyway,
by the way, do I remember correctly? I've been up since very early this morning, so I might mess up some facts, and you guys can keep check on me in the comment section. But did I read somewhere that they would be profitable if it wasn't for the Neutron development? So if they would decide to stop developing Neutron, they would be cash flow positive in the company.
You might be right. I mean, I didn't see that, but you could be right. I mean,
I'm gonna check into that because I have a memory that I saw a video where Peter Lab explicitly said this.
Oh, it might have been that radio, the podcast that he did last week, which I still haven't watched. I need to make sure I do that. I've been busy with moving and stuff of the like. I probably didn't get to it.
Completely understandable. And another parallel between Palantir and Rocket Lab for me is that, as opposed to Tesla, like I feel that Musk is very, very transparent on the huge plans that he has, and then he has very optimistic, sometimes unrealistic targets that can get investors very excited, until you learn how to discount Elon time. And I feel that on Palantir, they really keep the data to their vest, and we as retail investors who are doing a lot of research, you could see that, okay, they are not talking about certain things. They're not talking about how profitable they can become. They're not talking about how they're scaling within certain companies. And it's very annoying sometimes as a retail investor, but I also feel that it was really giving us an edge to research that company so much, because you could see like, oh my God, like they're really, really doing good despite whatever Wall Street and whatever you think. And if you read this Ashley Vance book, When the Heavens Went on Sale, and a little bit about Peter Beck, that he's also a similar guy. He keeps all the data to his vest. He does, or very close to his chest. He does, if he tells you something, he really honestly wants to do it. It's not an aspiration. It's like, obviously he's a human, so he can make mistakes. And my point is that we know that if they develop fully reusable rockets like the Neutron, they have the space systems. He has said many, many times that his goal is not to be a rocket launcher company. His goal is to build space infrastructure. And that is, in this last interview, he just basically said that it 10x is their valuation once they figure out how to do it. And it's also something that we need to read in between the lines. Like if he was Musk, he would have come out and said, we're going to get this valuation, and in 3 years, we're going to be this type of company. But he doesn't do it like that. Most probably, we're going to have an announcement that, 3 years from now, that, okay, now we're shooting up this thing to space, and it's like a space factory, and it's the new, the new department of Rocket Lab. And it's going to be a huge surprise on Wall Street, and the stock price is going to shoot up. And I feel that those of us who really did the research and understood the company are going to be really, really handsomely rewarded. That's another parallel for me between the two companies.
I agree. I think that they're going after a little bit more than strictly cash, and they're going with a purpose. They're going to make things easier for space exploration. And with that, I think, you focus on trying to help as many people as you can get to their goals. And a byproduct of that is making money. I mean, and so I think a lot of these people, Relativity, Astra, a lot of folks have entered this this area of focus and opportunity to strictly make money. And so I think with that, if you focus on the wrong things, then unfortunately you're going to try to cut corners and not really try to get it right. So anyway, I think that Rocket Lab is going about it the right way, and I think that they're well suited comparatively to many others. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but like Relativity, they're no longer doing a small launch vehicle. They're going for medium launch. The only one I can really think about. What's that?
I didn't know. Like they skipped completely the.
They had their Terrain. They had their Teran rocket, which now they're going to the Teran R. I forget what the light launch vehicle was, but they retired that. And after they had that one launch earlier this year, which never got to orbit, but it got pretty close, and then it exploded. And they said, "All right, well, we know how to launch a vehicle now," and they went straight from that small launch vehicle to the medium launch vehicle.
You see, this is the prime example of how speculative Relativity is, because if you look at Rocket Lab, they're developing the medium launch vehicle from a almost positive cash flow, huge war chest in the bank, with very proven engineers and team. And then this company, I'm sure that they don't have the same, like I'm sure it's tight on money for them, and then they have to develop a medium launch rocket with zero income, zero experience, and zero data being continuously gathered from small launches while they're developing it. So that's like climbing Mount Everest while being drunk, and it's just insanely hard.
I think what they saw was they basically, so they're going from the Teran 1 to the Teran R, and they basically said that they're going to take all the good things that they saw from the Teran 1, because you think about it, most people are going to fail on their first launch, right? So the fact that they even got close to orbit, I was teary-eyed. I thought it was awesome. Like I love the space, right? I love seeing rocket launches. It gets me fired up. So seeing them, a Relativity rocket go to space, like I'm not against anybody, right? I thought it was awesome. The thing that I just want to note though is that they're going for a reusable medium-sized launch vehicle. So instead of being in competition with Rocket Lab directly from a launch perspective, they're going directly towards kind of like a Falcon 9-esque sort of rocket, 22,000 pounds, or 22,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit, that sort of stuff, right? So if anybody still wants that low cost of entry, $6 to $9 million, you're still going to go with a Rocket Lab as opposed to Relativity, because Relativity is pricing themselves out of that, unless Relativity, their Teran R, is so reusable that they're able to get the price point down. Now that could be a thing to kind of discuss in the future, but they're kind of starting from scratch again. I don't know when they're going to try to launch this vehicle. Probably, I would assume 2025.
Yeah. It's a tough business. That's for sure. I'm happy that we can. I'm not I'm happy that I'm doing it from this side and investing into companies. And so, by the way, Francisco Ramirez commented, Astra News this morning, they are low on cash, defaulted on loans. And yes, we might as well just cover it. Basically, we were
surprise.
Yeah, so I read this news, and it's written very, very technically, but they didn't default on a loan. My understanding is that they were supposed to get a loan, and to be able to get this loan, they had certain agreements that had to be in place to be able to get this loan, and that's what they defaulted on. So they are not getting the loan paid out, because if you read the news, it says struggling space company Astra disclosed in a securities filing late Friday that it defaulted on a recent debt agreement and may not be able to raise needed cash as funds dwindle. Astra twice last month failed to meet minimum cash reserve requirements associated with 12.5 million note issuance to New Jersey investment group High Trail Capital. The debt raise first required that Astra have at least 15 million of cash and cash equivalents on hand. So this was the first requirement, and this they actually defaulted on before. So that liquidity requirement was adjusted after Astra failed to prove compliance the first time, to require at least 10.5 million of unrestricted, unencumbered cash and cash equivalents. So they had to, so they already defaulted on this once. They adjusted it. And during the adjustment time, they still burned too much cash. And now they're even below the adjusted amount. And they are basically warning that they cannot give any assurance that they will be able to consummate any additional transaction in a timely manner or at all. So Matt, what are your thoughts about this completely unforeseeable event?
Completely unforeseeable. Sorry, it's not funny to laugh at bankruptcy, but you know, look, I think that this just goes to the point of Rocket Lab having a very well capitalized balance sheet. Are they burning cash? Yes, but they had way more cash entering the year, over $500 million entering the year than Astra. I think Astra had $60 to $70 million, and the cash burn at Astra was a lot worse. So, I think this is just unfortunately going to be an opportunity for, maybe Astra is able to find some debt agreements to get them going another quarter or two. But it's more likely than not that in the beginning of 2024 or mid 2024, they'll be selling things off for parts. And maybe NASA will come in and step in, but it might also be NASA helping, figure out where these things get divvied up to, who they go to, right? Just like Rocket Lab was able to pick up stuff from Virgin Orbit for pennies on the dollar. Who's to say that Rocket Lab's not going to be able to do the same with Astra? You think small launch vehicles, the Rocket 3 was a small launch vehicle. The Rocket 4 is also going to be a small launch vehicle. And so there's a lot of synergies if these companies were to kind of utilize a lot of the same factories. My thought process is, does Rocket Lab actually need these additional factories? I know it's in California. I'm not exactly sure where in California it is. So that could be a piece where it might help. It might
it's not. In Alameda County.
Yeah, I don't know where that is in comparison to say Long Beach, where Rocket Lab mostly focuses. But anyway, it could be something that helps.
For me, what sticks out here is that when you're in as much of a trouble as these guys, I don't think debt is the solution, and because how are you even going to pay it back? And I think that the reason why they ended up raising debt is because they couldn't raise equity from anywhere else, and I think that they were maybe just trying to buy time or something, because I don't see the logic of like if I was an investment banker, and I would try to sell myself this Astra loan, that I'm going to loan $10 million to an entity that is burning like $15 million a quarter with zero income. Like, how is there a reasoning on you're getting your money back, when it clearly doesn't even get you to break even or any sort of thing like that. And this company on top of it can't even keep the minimum cash requirement, and then you renegotiate the cash requirement, and then the renegotiations take so long that then they miss the second requirement. So it's just huge red flag.
It's tough. I mean, you're going back to the conversation of, it doesn't matter if Astra has a better launch vehicle, if Relativity has a better launch vehicle. It comes back to who can survive the longest, to the point where they have enough of a runway from cash perspective to be one of the last few standing. And, SpaceX doesn't have to worry about that. With Starlink, everybody saw that they're basically cash flow break even at this point. So congrats to them. ULA has a lot of backing from Boeing and Lockheed, so they're probably pretty good. But in reality, the rest of the folks are just sitting there being like, how do we make a product that, is allowing us to stay in business for long enough where all the backlogs of all these other people consolidate, and we end up having the ability to be one of the last few people standing, so that it's legitimately like a NASA needs us, we can't fail sort of situation. Because right now there could be a lot more consolidation, and I think NASA will still let it happen. I think if it gets down to a couple major players,
I mean, there's
that'd be a different story.
250 startups or something on just on rockets. So there can be a lot of,
and it's not even the United States, right? There's a lot in Japan, there's a lot in India, there's a lot in China that are all starting. So, I mean, before we were kind of doing the SpaceX thing, we were going to Russia and having Russia send our astronauts into space, right? So, I mean, you don't need an American-based company. It would just be nice to have an American-based company just for, the sake of staying in the space exploration race.
Yeah, I mean, on if Astra has to sell off things, I think maybe Rocket Lab, as you said, wouldn't benefit so much from their factories. But I think if Rocket Lab can take over their contracts, that would be really, really helpful for Rocket Lab, I think. And somebody would have to take over their contracts, and because SpaceX is not in that field and nobody else is really having any small launch vehicles, it would have to be Rocket Lab. Like, there's no one else in this space as far as I understand and know.
For sure. No, I appreciate you bringing it up, because I need to add this to my calendar for the Astra
the earnings call.
Yeah. Save as.
Yeah, we can also cover it on a Rocket Lab weekly. And on Rocket Lab related news, there was not much happening this week before earnings, except for a new hire that was announced. That is, can you guys see my screen? Do you see? Am I sharing? Okay, let me check.
Yeah, you're sharing.
Yeah. Okay, good. So this lady has joined the board of directors. Her name is Armagno, Lieutenant General Armagno, and she has been in leadership position for 35 years in the Air Force and then Space Force. And I think that this is something that Palantir does a lot when you hire in people from the agency that you're trying to sell contracts to, because they have the comm lines, they know people there because they have spent so much time there. And I think that this is what they're trying to do with this is get contracts for Neutron. Dave G did a fantastic breakdown of a Space Force contract that is coming up. That there was a phase of it that was just awarded to SpaceX and ULA. I think SpaceX got 8 launches and ULA got 10 launches. But in this next round, Rocket Lab is potentially eligible to compete with SpaceX. And if they just pick up a few contracts, it will like multiply Rocket Lab's revenue by a lot. I mean, one launch of Neutron is $60 million, and they're probably going to do $60 million this quarter. So if they just get one launch, it doubles the quarter.
Yeah.
What do you think?
These things, these directors, I think, can be hit or miss. I mean, I'm very excited about it because to me, there's more upside than there is potential downside. I mean, having somebody like this come in and being able to bring potential business and stuff of the like, that it's more of a
she's
positive.
She's not just a hire, right? Like they made her, like they gave her a board seat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only other time though that I could say that it kind of backfired was, I think, when Virgin Galactic, I think it was like Chris Shepard. Let me just double check so I'm not misspeaking here. Was it Chris Shepard? It was one of the, somebody that was pretty prolific astronaut, I think, joined the board of Virgin Galactic, and we obviously know how well that's going over at Virgin Galactic with respect to their just continued delays. Now they're actually offering commercial spaceflight, which is good, but they can be hit or miss. But I think that bringing somebody's expertise like this from the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Space Force, I think might be better than, say, because of the nature of how Rocket Lab does business comparatively to, say, Virgin Galactic. I think having somebody on the board like this is more beneficial than, say, having a Chris Shepard over at Virgin Galactic, because it's a completely different business what they're trying to do over Virgin Galactic. So I think that there's no negatives associated with bringing a woman of this sort of magnitude on by any means.
Yeah. Because I mean, like on Virgin Galactic, the astronaut on the board is more of like a PR value, and this lady, like, she's bringing all her connections to the board. It's unfortunately, or I don't know how to say it in a nice way, but this is being like talked about in political circles, that this is this revolving back door between the private sector and the government agencies, that some people in the military, they fill up government positions, and then when they're close to retiring, they get this very juicy contracts at military contractors, and they are trying to regulate this somehow, or some Republicans I saw are trying to pass some regulation on this, because in some way or shape or form it's not 100% correct, which is a viewpoint that I can see, but it's a very effective way of getting government contracts, and I think Palantir has employed this, and now Rocket Lab I'm sure SpaceX is employing the same thing. What's up, Matt? Did you find it?
Yeah, I just want to double check I'm not misspeaking about the gentleman that was on the board. So feel free to continue on.
Okay, I mean, there's not much more to say about this. I think we can go into the earnings and our predictions of what's going to happen after earnings. I think this earnings season has been pretty interesting, because 2 weeks ago, Google reported, Facebook reported, and many other reported, and I felt that their reports were like exceptionally good. And then because of the macro, the market ended up selling off anyways. And then somehow last week, at least the company that I was involved with, it reported really, really good, but it got rewarded actually for it. So I don't know. This week it feels like Jay Powell is our friend, because if we listen to his speech, like, it very much seems like we're at the end of the rate hike. And because Rocket Lab is more of a speculative company, I think that it's a relief for Rocket Lab investors that at least there is no more rate hikes coming. And but for the earnings, I don't know what can be going into earnings. I feel like it's going to be one of those boring earnings where they're just going to say that, yeah, like, Neutron is, in the works, it's going good. We're soon going to fly with the Electron, and I don't anticipate any big announcement. And then it's hard to predict, because the market, I don't know how the market is going to react to it. So
I could see that. Yeah, I think it's the how do I say this? The market should not be surprised at the revenue decrease quarter over quarter. I guess it's staying flat rather, due to the fact that they delayed one of the launches into 4Q or even possibly 1Q of next year. The thing that I think is going to really drive the stock in one way or another is the pace of future launches. And obviously we're here in November. We didn't have any launches in October. I know that they were kind of anticipating restarting some of the launches in mid-November timeframe, but yet I have yet to really start to see any announcements as to that specifically after the FAA announcement on October 25th. So the pace is going to dictate where they end up for fiscal year 23. And then also, depending on that pace, really try to understand what a full year 2024 may look like. How many launches could there be? And really see if we can start to get over to a point of getting closer to $350 million in revenue. Because you think about it, if we're able to get to the 70 to 80 million dollars a quarter range, then you're starting to look at closer to $300 million in revenue. And we've kind of been averaging 50 to 60 something. And hopefully we've kind of plateaued, I'd say, in that respect. And we haven't really been accelerating more than 3 to 4 launches in a quarter. To me, I want to get closer to 5 to 6 launches in a quarter. I want to continue to see the space systems business grow at pace. And so, I think that we need to get to closer to doubling the revenue in a quarter to really start to see the underlying operating expenditures be fully offset by the fact that you're selling more stuff, more launches, more cost of, or just more goods in general, to really offset that underlying operating expenditure costs to get you closer to that break even EBITDA. And so, or at least just bide your time until you get to the Neutron launches, like you stated. And maybe Neutron is the savior of Rocket Lab, where it really takes it to the next level and it kicks it into second gear, or third gear, however you want to put it. But yeah,
rockets don't have gears.
You're
it
not
takes
wrong
it into
there.
turbo pump.
Turbo pump, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. So I don't know. I think that the proof is going to be in how Peter and those structure, whether that's answered in the presentation itself, saying we're going to kickstart and get 1 launch per week for the next 5 weeks or something like that, to get 5 launches in the quarter for 4Q or what have you. But third quarter is already in the books. They already kind of told us what the revised guidance is. I won't expect any changes to that really. But I'm going to keep looking at the EBITDA margin and what the forecast is going into fourth quarter, to see what they forecast for that as well. If they're able to kind of maintain that high 20s, low 30s EBITDA margin, I'm going to be pretty ecstatic, especially if once we go into fiscal year 24 with hopefully a better pace of launch and newer contracts. As we continue to consolidate the space, your ability to charge more margin per cost of good goes up, right? You don't have to subsidize as much because the competition is less. And so that's kind of another hope that I have with kind of this further consolidation, is there's going to be less and less people to turn to eventually, and the margins are only going to get better in that case. So in short, I know I talked for about 2-3 minutes there. In short, I think the proof is all going to be in the presentation and what kind of guidance they provide for 4Q and potentially going into 24.
Yeah, I actually wanted to show here the past quarters and past third quarters. So in 2020, we had 10 million in total revenue for the whole quarter. Then in third quarter, then in 21, we had 5.29. So it was a 50% decrease year over year. And then in 2022, we had 63 million, which is like a 1,092% increase in revenue. And we are probably going to land, I think they said between 66 to 68, let's say 67. That is a less than 10% increase compared to Q3 2022. And when do we expect Neutron again? It's the end of 2024, right? That we expect. That
the last guidance they provided, they didn't say a successful launch or anything. Like, I think if I remember correctly, it was a launch attempt by the end of 24.
Yeah. Because
So
basically, I would predict that we're going to be quite flat, or like, I don't know how much, as you said, like maybe we're going to the 70 million per quarter. But the minute Neutron comes online, we're going to have, like, one launch will add 55 million. So one launch will be almost 100x increase. If we can get two launches, it will be like a quad, like a triple increase in the quarter. And I think that that's the next sort of like leg up.
yeah.
And as you said, it's a huge difference if they're guiding it that it's delayed and it's going to be in the end of 2025. You have to reevaluate the models, and I think we will get a very negative reaction on it. Also, cash flow wise, because that means that they will burn more and yeah.
So I mean, they've stated, and maybe this is thinking too deep into it, but at the max capacity that they are comfortable with, if everything were safe and everything were, ready and prepared, they could do 156 launches per year. That's a launch per week per launch pad, and there's 3 launch pads. There's launch pad 1A and launch pad 1B in New Zealand. Then they have the one in Wallops Island, Virginia. So that's the 3rd launch pad, and then there's going to be a 4th one. Go ahead.
You're bringing up such a good point. But continue. I just want to come back to this.
The thought process is there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So if you were to just look on a quarterly basis, right, and break that down, there's 13 weeks in a quarter. Multiply that by 3, that's 39 launches per quarter for Electron. So currently, right now, if you think about it in terms of operating efficiency, or the ability to do more launches, we could technically 10x the amount of launches that we can do today. From just an Electron perspective. And so you think that launch capability, 39 launches, let's just say you're charging at a minimum 6 million per launch, which is kind of undercutting it. That's about $250 million in revenue.
No, 7.5 they're charging.
Yeah.
I think they said
say however you want it, but even if you do 39 times 7.5, that's close to $300 million in revenue. We're not anywhere close to that as of yet.
Such a good point, because what I want to ask you is, do you think we're not doing these launches because we just blew up and don't have an FAA approval? No, that was just a joke. We know that that's happening. But do you think that it's because there's not enough sales to back that up? Or is it that the production of the rockets, so they have the launch facilities to launch that many, but they have no production facilities? Because we know from an interview with Peter Beck that it's the same amount of personnel that you need to launch one a month or one a week. So what do you think it is? Because I kind of got the idea that they're very maxed on the market. So like
that's the way I felt, right? So the way that I've heard Peter describe it in earnings calls, and I want to say it was specifically 2Q. He said, why are we only doing 3 to 4 launches a quarter? And analysts asked this. They said, currently we're maxed out by the amount of people we are getting contracts with. And so my thought process is like, okay, well, you're seeing these continued deepening of partnerships with Black Sky, who's the other one? Capella. So you're seeing these deepening of relationships. My thought process is wouldn't they want to be doing more than 1 launch per quarter, right? So I'm curious to see if that is. So to answer your question, I think they have more operational capability than they are using. I want to believe Peter when he says that it's the market. But I feel like there's a combination of both, right? Like, because if you had literally the ability to launch 10 times as many rockets.
But wouldn't you want to say that though, because that would be super good news for the investors to say, like, look, we're ramping up production. There's like more demand than we can fulfill, but we're just not managing with the production, and we're gonna focus on that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it makes me happy to know that they have the ability to, but like that just makes me think that it's it's a pro and a con, right? It's a pro because they might have way more operating expenditures than they need to actually launch the amount of facilities. But at the same time, it means they don't have to expand or go through all these growing pains because they already have the ability to grow into those facilities because the facilities are already there. So, and to go back to your point, I think that they can, at least from what I understand, make a rocket per week right now with the capability that they have. And um, this was before they picked up the Virgin Orbit facilities and stuff of the like. So I believe them when they say that they could launch more than they're currently doing, the 3 to 4 per quarter. I just haven't seen it yet.
Let's see if we can ask this question somehow on the earnings call. There is this Say or something app that I don't know if it's an app or something, but it's like retail investors can ask questions on earnings call.
Yeah, I know on Robinhood you can if you're a shareholder on Robinhood.
No, definitely. There is no Robinhood in Sweden. I'm Interactive Brokers. Are you Robinhood?
I mostly do Fidelity, but I buy my crypto through Robinhood just because it makes it easy to do small incremental buys. So
Okay.
every time I get paid, I buy 50 or $100 worth of crypto, and then after a couple weeks I'll move it to a cold storage wallet.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, because this is fascinating, because I feel that if they could ramp up to this 150 launches, we know again from interviews that then the gross margin would get insane on the rockets. I believe that they would be a very nicely cash flow positive, profitable business just on the small launches, right? And I think you could make a case that they're undervalued, like just from the small launches, right? Like without Neutron, without space systems, without anything, if this would come through, and they seem to have the factory. I mean, if they can, because I also heard this, that they're able to produce 1 electron per week. So that means that from the production, they could do 52 launches and not 150. So they like, it does sound like the production is behind, like they would not be able to, like they would have to scale up more to be able to shoot
that's still 3 to 4 times more than they're currently launching. So
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if it would just require them to buy another printer, or if they acquired that through the Virgin Orbit acquisition. I don't know.
Let's put it this way.
I would love to hear some color, because can you correct me if I'm wrong here? The Virgin Orbit pickup, was that in June or July?
Yes, I have no clue.
I know they mentioned it in the 2Q call, but I don't know if they could go into much color because it's I want to see. So I'm curious if they go into a little bit more color about their like what their capacity is and stuff of the like. Sorry, I'm kind of like pulling at straws now, but I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I mean, what's sus for me is that if they have that production and they're not scaling to that production, so if they say that we can produce 1 electron per week and there's not 1 electron per week coming out of the factories, it has to have a reason. Like either customers are not there, or the customers are there, but the satellites are not ready and they have to wait for the customers to be done. And I think it's a mix of these things, but I would think mostly that they don't have 50 customers to launch for this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just to go back to the point, the Virgin Orbit facilities were picked up in May, and then they just opened their headquarters about a month or so ago. So I'm assuming they'll probably discuss more about that in the earnings call as well.
Yeah. Okay, good. So do you think, let's make a bet. What do you think, just for fun, what do you think the stock price is going to do, and by how much? Let's see which one of us comes closer.
What will the price
or
do?
we can do it like this. Do you think it's more likely that the stock will be closer to 5 after earnings or closer to 4? Meaning like it will go up or down.
I'm fairly confident it'll be closer to 5 than 4. because it's $4.69 right now. So yeah,
Okay,
I have a
just to
feeling
be
it'll be close to
bold,
5.
I will make a bet for fun that I think after earnings we're going over 5,
Okay.
and we see if that comes through. There's so much surprises. I think we did a good dive in because, yeah, as I said, if just from the Electron launches, we could build a case that the company is undervalued, and if there is no customers and we flatten out here, then the next leg up is the Neutron. But if Neutron is late, then it poses a significant damage to the valuation and yeah, everything. So this is the things that will probably move the stock in the earnings call.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking for $9 to $18 million in cash burn. That's where I hope we get to, because that gets us another tranche closer towards, kind of break even. Because we burned $48 million in the first 2 quarters. If we're only burning 9 to 18 million, that means we're burning at a less and less rate. That means more cash on hand for the long term. So that's kind of my hope with that. So we'll see what ends up with that. But that's kind of my hope, and I hope they release a little bit about the pace of future launches as well. That's all I can really hope for in the earnings call.
Okay, cool. I think that was a good discussion for today. It was not a very busy week for Rocket Lab, and if we are lucky, maybe we can live stream the earnings call with you, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. We will see.
I don't know if I would live stream it alone. Well, we're gonna see. We will let you guys know on Twitter. Francisco Ramirez, he's betting that the stock is going to be flat. So we see what happens.
Yeah, we will see. We'll see.
We are anyways long-term holders, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is that the company is doing good.
Very good.
So thank you so much for watching, guys. See you guys on hopefully the earnings call, and if not, then next time,
week.
same time,
Yeah.
same place.
Thanks, Vince.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.